Welcome back to another video, folks, and to another in our series of Bagration warm-up videos. Whilst we're waiting on the release of the German book, we're going to have a few games using Soviet lists from Soviet Bagration. So I thought I would take some time to go through the lists that we're likely to be using. And I'm going to start with these guys. You'll have already seen them more or less in this makeup here in a previous battle report. I'll stick a link at the end just in case you missed it. But this is a Soviet heavy assault gun formation. So it's quite a small unit altogether, quite a small formation altogether. If you compare it to your typical Soviet force with masses of tanks or infantry and guns and all kind of things. So it could be a good starter list for you if you don't have any Soviets and you want to get into the game. Let's start by looking at the core formation, and this has got company command plus 3 combat platoons. So the company command is an IS-2. Now that's a sole tank, which is quite vulnerable, and remember when it goes, that's a platoon lost. That's a platoon that's not counting towards formation motivation. The main platoon is the ISU 122, sorry. I'm going to confuse them all the time. So there's a platoon of 5 and then a platoon of 4 ISU 152s. So they've also got a infantry backup of a Hero SMG company. Now, my first iteration of this list, instead of the SMGs, had just a ordinary Hero company, which is bigger and used up the points a bit better, but it is not part of the core formation. So, for instance, you could have him knocked out, them run away, and then all 5 of them would be out of the game. That'd be game over, in fact. Whereas having these guys gives the formation a bit more survivability. I do like the Hero motor rifle company, the ordinary one, better, but I'm going to use that on other lists, and it makes sense due to the small size of this list, just 3 platoons, to have this 4th one there to help keep the formation on the table. Now, if you're not familiar with these guys, they've got really good anti-tank, strong frontal and side armour. It gives them a chance to save against all but the heaviest versions of the German 88s. They can also do bombardments. So you could start the game with this platoon and this platoon firing bombardments. You don't want to necessarily pin too many hopes on the effect of that bombardment because it's an attritional weapon, but it's a good option. And you could, for instance, in a practice game that me and Brian had, these guys came up against an anti-tank gun line in ambush with them behind, so they started a bombardment on top of the anti-tank guns whilst they did direct fire. So you've got a nice bit of flexibility. But direct fire, 1 shot each. All the aim's 1 shot, and they're at a penalty on the move for slow firing. So you're not going to put a lot of shots down range. You have to rely on survivability. Now, to help that out, what I've got added to the list is, first of all, in support, support option is OT34. So they're flamethrower OT34s. The 76mm version, because I wanted as many of them as possible. You could have 85mm versions, but then they're becoming more like gun tanks, and that's not what I'm after here. I want a mob of tanks that's got a fair degree of survivability against medium stuff, but then can deal with enemy infantry for that final push that you might need to clear them off an objective. We played this again in a game, a practice game, and they were quite effective because there's so many of them. If they don't take any casualties, there's so many of them, they're quite effective even against dug-in veterans. They're not so good for motivation. They're reluctant, and they only hit on a 5+ in assault, but I'd like to think that I'll just be being a nuisance and flaming things rather than getting in close, assaulting or dealing with enemy tanks. But they're there, as I said, as a mob to either run out in front of these guys or to get round the flank or come on from reserve and hopefully give my opponent too much to deal with. And then this is a wildcard option. Unfortunately, they don't have an option in the Soviet Bagration list for reconnaissance as a support option. So we're taking this as a wildcard, and we're quite happy that we're not getting, off theme or off historical context. Just a small armoured car platoon, and that's just to move out in advance, close in on areas of potential ambush, perhaps like tree lines, woods, hedges and such. Let's try and push ambushes back or force the ambush to be deployed early. And that's it, plus a wee group of machine guns that might come in useful. So it's a very attacking list. You're going to struggle to get a decent 60-40 split in defence, but we're going to be using it as an attack in the campaign. If you were defending, I think you could get that, the 122s, the OT-34s and infantry on the table at the start. I just don't know what they would be doing in defence. But if you're playing this, you're going to hope to be attacking. The next list is a hero list. It's a hero motor rifle battalion and a hero T-34 85 battalion. So let's look at these guys because they're quite simple in terms of makeup. There's a company command, 2 platoons of 4. That's 41 points, which presents a pretty good split for reserves as well. Now these guys are, as you see in the rest of the list, these are the hardest hitting anti-tank that I've got, so this list won't do well against lots of Tigers, but I tell you what, there's going to be a lot for a Tiger list to deal with. They might have fun shooting up these guys, but that doesn't mean they're going to be breaking this infantry company or holding on to objectives or such like. So I'm not too fussed about coming up against well armoured opponents with this list because they should be few in number. So the infantry force is 2 10-man plus 1 commissar, or 2 10 base rather, plus 1 commissar companies. The company command, 6 heavy machine guns, 6 medium mortars, and then 4 57mm anti-tank guns. They've got 1 less firepower than a 76, but anti-tank 11 compared to anti-tank 9 is a big difference. 11 means you're pretty much being confident of rolling for firepower against medium tanks, whereas 9 you're pretty sure you don't stand much of a chance of even getting to firepower. So I do like them. They were one of my go-tos in version 3. And then in support we've got a 76mm battery. We've also got an observer armoured car and a 122mm battery. Now I didn't go for the 152mm because they're 12 points, and that's 50% more, which is quite a lot. And these guys, they're still pretty damn good with anti-tank 3 firepower, 3 in bombardments. That's going to hurt. Because remember, artillery, it's not a knockout weapon, folks, it's an attritional weapon, so that's going to hurt dug-in infantry. And then these guys, I could have chosen Katyushas instead of these guys, but Katyushas, you can't dig them in. They've got a 5-up save. These guys have got a 4-up save, but then you have to pass your firepower against them because they're dug in and so on. Katyushas can move, these guys can't, but overall I think these guys are just a bit more survivable, and they're a bit easier to use as well, because the Katyushas, trying to pin something before you assault it is quite difficult because of the size of the template. So I've gone for these guys. But one point to note, folks, is the artillery options, with the exception of the 152s, artillery options are 8 points each. So it's very easy to swap things in and out of your list if you want to see what works best for you. So there you go, there's the support. That there is one formation, and that is another formation. These guys would be in reserve if they were defending. So that's good anti-tank, good anti-infantry, 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 potential anti-tank as well, but you want to really be using them in the artillery role as much as possible. And these guys, there's enough bases to hold on to objectives, and if anyone attacks them, the damn will better kill them or drive them off first turn because they hit on a 2+ in assault. So there you go, folks, that's the first infantry list. Hero motor rifle with Hero T-34-85s in support. Back to tanks. This is a Hero T-34-85 battalion, and most of what you see is core to the formation. You've got 3 platoons of 4 T-34-85s with 1 single company command or battalion command. You've got a small platoon of 5+ commissar bases of SMG, Hero SMGs, 6 medium mortars, and now a wild card we've added in there is the armoured car observer, because I've got a point going spare, so it's an acceptable wild card. Once again, I'm quite happy with that. And then SG-100s. So these guys here, there are not so many of them compared to like a massed unit of infantry. If they come up against something with good armour, they may struggle, so I'm bringing these guys with me. Now they don't get the reroll of misses at long range. That was in version 3, which I loved. These guys were just brutal in version 3, but they are veteran skilled and careful for being shot at, so they're hit on 4s, which means you can use these guys. You could shoot and scoot them, you can blitz them into position, and it's going to be hard to hit them. And they've got decent armour on the front. It's not amazing, but it should allow them to dish out a bit of damage, certainly make the opponent careful of them when it comes to deploying their heavies, if they've got any, and if they've got mediums, they're going to be very worried about them. Only 1 shot each. They don't shoot very well on the move, not so good in assault and all these kind of things, but a good specialist weapon to bring along to support these guys here. So we'll take a look next at an ordinary T-34-85 and see what the options are in terms of the differences in points and how that affects the list you could put together. Here's what a ordinary T-34-85 formation might look like. What I've done though is I have reduced this down to the minimum of 3. If you leave that platoon as it is, you only really get a couple of points difference. You get 2 platoons of 6 instead of, so that's 12 instead of 3 platoons of 4, and you save a couple of points per platoon. So you could, it's quite tricky to spend those points on something, so it makes sense to just bulk up the units a bit. I mean, these guys, T-34-85s against medium German armour is pretty hard hitting. You know, Panzer IVs, for instance, they're really going to struggle against them because they've got decent front armour and really good anti-tank. But these guys are green. Instead of a 3+ skill check of the heroes, they are green. So you're going to find it difficult to do those blitz moves, which is probably going to hurt. And assault as well on a 5+, it's going to hurt too. So you've just got to decide whether or not you want to bulk up on your tanks, like lots of tanks, or you're confident in using a smaller number without the danger of losing a smaller number very quick. But there you go, guys. There's 2 different T-34-85 formations. Back to some infantry. So this is a Hero Shock Rifle Battalion. Excuse me, I had to double check. Now this is a list which has got a hell of a lot of 3+ skill checks, and some guys who are careful too, so it's quite a scary list, to be honest. So let's just go through the the core units first of all. So there is this 11 base platoon with a commissar and a flamethrower. There is the Storm Group, which is 7 bases, flamethrower, mortar, heavy machine gun, and anti-tank rifle. Now those guys are careful as well. Then Scout Platoon, which is just 5 bases there, but they're careful veterans. They're not so good in assault because they're scouts, but a nice unit for 7 points. Company command. Then 6 mortars and 6 heavy machine guns. I know there's one missing from each because it's a bit of a conundrum. These guys have stolen one of each. I'll see what, I'll probably just proxy something in. No doubt one or more will die very quick. Anyway, I could mess the list about to try and work maybe heavy mortars in or something, but I'm just going to keep it with that. And then in support, 3 ISU 152s and 5 ISU 122s. So that's really good artillery and hard-hitting anti-tank, though not too many shots. But this is quite an interesting force. They're going to be able to move up any position without being in too much of a risk. They won't suffer quite so much from artillery barrages either because they're careful. These guys aren't there reckless. It's these guys here. So it's a very interesting force. I'm thinking myself it's probably going to be one of the river crossing games that I use these guys in. That would seem appropriate. So there you go. Hard hitting. They hit hard on assault, by the way, as well. Hard hitting and hard to hit. So quite an interesting company. I'm looking forward to trying them. So there you go, folks. Those are the lists that I will definitely try to use in the upcoming campaign. I won't be using mass infantry lists. I've done that in mid-war, and I might do one in late war, but it doesn't suit my style of play. I'm very cagey. I play the long game, as you probably noticed from my games. There's not many massive charges right at the start. But here is the cast, so to speak, of the late war Soviet collection. Not every one of these is going to make an appearance, but I thought whilst making this video I would just get the late war stuff out. Some of it's a little bit redundant, there's you don't have the regimental guns anymore or these pioneer platoons, but what the heck, get them on the table. So keep your eye out for some more warm-up games before the German Bagration book is out, and then we'll play these Soviet lists against, as much as possible, lists from the new Bagration book using the new models and troop types that are in that. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope this has given you some ideas. You've played these games yourself as well, so please stick down your experiences in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the good things that helps me that helps me build the channel and share the hobby with like-minded people like yourselves. Thanks again.